So when I went to do this video, I realized that about 100 people made the same video, but I assure you mine's better, trust me. I had to rework the script a bit for this video, and I'm going to talk about Resident Evil 4 as little as possible because I don't want to make another comparison between the two games. I think we could all agree there's enough of those. I'm going to talk about it for about 2 minutes and shut up because you really can't mention Cold Fear without some asshat blabbering and drooling all over his keyboard about it being a Resident Evil clone despite the fact it's better than the last dozen Resident Evil games we've got. Anyway, Resident Evil 4 was released in 2005, and wow, I think I've mentioned RE4 on this channel more times than RE4 has been ported to a new console. But anyway, seriously, this game is huge. Lots of people want it on the success. Even Capcom and Shinji Mikami, the series creators, seem to be stuck in an endless loop of trying to remake Resident Evil 4 again, that they neglect making actually good games and only continue to produce subpar games. Oops. Anyway, one of the games that emerged after Resident Evil 4's success was a game called Cold Fear, published by Ubisoft, and it's fairly overlooked and treated as an RE4 clone because it was released so closely after RE4 was, and because of this label the game sold extremely poor. Cold Fear has you take control of Tom Hansen. No, wrong Hansen.
We had a lot to talk about, you and I. Why don't you just have a seat right there, please?
God damn it, Chris Hansen, I'm not gonna take a seat! Hansen is part of the U.S. Coast Guard sent to investigate the mysterious circumstances involving a Russian whaler. Upon getting on the ship, he discovers a parasite is infecting the crew of the ship and turning them into zombies. The main enemy types in this game are regular Russian soldiers who shoot at you with MP5s, who drop AK-47 ammo for half the game until you could actually get the MP5, zombies who wield knives and occasionally guns, and these parasite kind of monsters that host themselves inside the crew members. The best way I could describe them is kind of like head crabs from Half-Life, where they emerge after killing a zombie, they'll leap out. Only these things are a lot more dickish. For example, a head crab will leap around, maybe knock a few points off your health, not too bad. But these things, they will drain your health down to nothing, possibly even kill you if you don't kill them quick enough. You also get a pretty decent arsenal to protect yourself with.
Did you bring protection?
Yeah.
Perfect.
The only bad news about that is you're probably not going to need that type of protection tonight.
God damn it, Chris, leave me alone! All of the weapons are quite suitable. Even the handgun from the start can take out most enemies in 2-3 hits on normal. You also get an MP5, a shotgun, grenade launcher, flamethrower, and of course it really wouldn't be a game without Russians without a good old AK. You can't upgrade any of these weapons, and personally I prefer when games don't have upgrades for guns and instead they're all just decent right off the bat to use. I think it's kind of weird because the very first note you pick up in the game at the very start of the game is talking about ammo conservation, but on the normal difficulty I blasted through almost every enemy I saw, and I don't think I ran out of ammo once, which that's not really a bad thing. I think it just makes the game more fun than anything. Landing headshots is super satisfying, and there's explosive barrels and stuff in the game which encourages you to use, like there's also like valve handles that you shoot off and flames come out. And I've always felt like the barrels were always like really out of the way, or spots the enemies would never go near, and they all move pretty quick, so I think it's better to just shoot the zombies yourself. But occasionally, like this clip you see here, you will get lucky every once in a while. Plus, the enemies drop loot such as health and ammo, but if they burn, you can't pick anything off them, so barrels and lighting enemies on fire is not necessarily useless because it's good for crowds, but if you're low on ammo, it's better to just shoot them and wait for the possibility of getting ammo for your guns. But the flamethrower is probably, I don't know, certain enemies it's good on, like the head crab kind of things, they're not good on at all, but the packs of zombies they can really take out in pretty much like only like 1 or 2 seconds of holding the flamethrower down. And I mean, that's not saying much, but it is definitely one of the better video game flamethrowers they've used. And then the spear gun kind of slows enemies down. As far as I know, it doesn't do any damage against them, so I guess it's kind of good for these charger things, which kind of look a lot like the Bandersnatches from Resident Evil Code Veronica, but we're not going to talk about that. When we get to the actual gameplay, though, we can see where that comparison to RE4 comes from. I referenced the gameplay in a previous video I made on the split Resident Evil fanbase, and I applauded this game for how good the controls are, because even though they're a bit rough around the edges, I do think this is a great control scheme, because I personally love both fixed camera and over the shoulder, so I think the game implements both of them really well, and it fluently transitions between the two. For the most part, you're playing from the fixed camera when you're moving around and stuff, and then occasionally it goes over the shoulder when you're running. That's more towards the oil rig segment of the game. until you aim to shoot him, and then it switches to over the shoulder all the time. I personally think a lot of games, specifically horror games, should try to go for the style more. I think it's very underrated. And I think it's a little rough around the edges, like I said before, but I'm sure if they got the chance to make a sequel to this game, they could probably definitely perfect the gameplay. The biggest example, I think, of annoying gameplay in this is the limited stamina. I don't think it's good game design. It's an annoying trend that needs to die, which kind of defeats the purpose of conserving ammo when you can't run away. If the enemies grab you, you need to fight them off, and it completely drains your stamina or resistance? Sorry, resistance it's called for some reason. I don't really know why. But yeah, I don't like limited stamina in any game, not just horror games, just I think it's kind of annoying. The game also lets you crush down the enemies' heads, which is an improvement over Resident Evil, where you could only do it if they're crawling on the floor and then they just so happen to grab you. This, if you down an enemy, you could walk up to them and simply just crush their head, which I think is pretty cool. Navigation can be a bit difficult since there's no map and everything you would probably guess is in Russian, except every note in the game for some reason is all written in English. But even though there's no map, the game always kind of gives you a clear objective and will generally guide you in the right way, as the areas aren't incredibly big, except the oil rig can get a bit confusing. But otherwise, it's pretty easy to get around. But there are definitely times I've gotten lost, because there's so many different floors and elevators and stuff to go through. Like, honestly, it can get a bit overwhelming at times, but because Hansen usually talks to people over the radio, it's usually generally they tell you what to do. And I think the atmosphere is brilliantly done. It really makes you feel like you're on an abandoned ship drifting in the ocean. The ship you're on for the bulk of the game is in the middle of a storm, and it plays into the gameplay. When you're walking around the ship, it'll be like swaying constantly. When you're outside on the decks, you'll have to dodge waves that are splashing over on board, and you could even fall over, lose some damage. You could slide across the deck too, if like I think at one point in the game that happened to me. But yeah, and this also applies to the oil rig segment of the game as well. Like, there's like a laboratory kind of section you have to walk across, like the ocean line kind of, and that gameplay also comes back later. And I guess I'll talk about the save system while I'm here. This game kind of follows like that early like 2000s kind of save system that a lot of games had, where like it only saves after you like complete like an objective or something. And unlike most horror games, there's usually like a typewriter or something you could save on, however many ink ribbons or whatever you have, or if you want to just save as freely as you want. So Cold Fear only being able to let you save after you complete an objective, it's not really the worst, because I don't think the game is particularly hard, but I feel like on harder difficulties it might be a bit frustrating. I will admit one thing though, I think the oil rig segment of the game can be a bit dickish at times, so I've had a lot of cheap deaths from that just because of trial and error kind of deaths. So I think when it comes to the oil rig segment, that's when it only becomes a problem, because then you have to backtrack a lot and redo a bunch of shit, because you died like a really cheap death because of some trial and error shit, you know? But it's not that intolerable, it's just, I think, one of the features of the game that hasn't aged well. And even then, honestly, I really don't even mind. It's not even that big of a deal, but it's just worth mentioning, though. Now, the game is separated into two major sections, as I've been mentioning throughout the video. There's the Russian whaler and the oil rig. It's got its fair share of cliches.
Hansen, one more thing.
Yeah?
You need to...
Have no fear, for I have the knowledge you need to know. Yes, sir, I, and I alone, possess the secret. And all I need to do now is tell you that little thing. To find and cure Champ, that one single secret you need to know is... What the... How's it going?
Great. Nothing personal, man, but you're fired from life.
Hansen is kind of an interesting character. You don't usually see a Coast Guard as a video game protagonist, so I think that's kind of a cool change. You'll meet other characters along the way, but most of them die before you can say,
I'm scared. I'm scared.
So you've got a big afternoon planned, huh?
I genuinely think people should play this game, so I'm going to keep it as spoiler-free as I can, so that's all I'm going to cover on the story. So to conclude, even though I think the game heavily borrows a lot of gameplay elements from other horror games, I think it uses them in a great and unique way, and I feel like if the game got a sequel, they could really knock it out of the park. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. And if you did enjoy, I make tons of videos like this on survival horror, mostly Resident Evil, I'll be honest, but, you know, if you like that kind of stuff, definitely consider subscribing. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Leave a like on the video if you did enjoy as well. So, catch y'all later.
Please have a seat.